Welcome to the April 21st, 2016 Downtown Design Review Committee. First order of business, silence your cell phones, pagers. Do the people still have those? And we will get ready for the minutes. Hope everybody has gotten to.
Do we do roll call?
Oh, you're right. Gummit he is. Paula.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner.
Present.
Charles Ainsworth. Present. Corey Bates. Connie Scothorn. Richard Tannenbaum.
Present.
Danielle Theriault.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Has everyone read the minutes? And if so, do I have a motion
Move
and
to
a second?
approve.
Tannenbaum, Faulkner, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving right along, we have no cases withdrawn. We have one continuance request. Is there anyone on the committee or anyone in the audience that wants to discuss this? If not, do we have a motion for continuance?
Move to continue the relocation of proposed trash enclosure.
Okay.
June 16th.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was a Tannenbaum Ainsworth motion. Okay, there's nothing on the consent docket. On the cases for individual consideration, I would like to move up cases E and F on the agenda. Is the applicant here for the mural on 4 West Sheridan?
Come up.
If so, come forward.
That might be them that just walked in.
Okay, is the applicant here on the 4 West Sheridan?
Yes, both sets are applicants are here.
Okay. You want to come forward? Oh, thank you. Personal opinion. Feel like you need to excuse yourself? Okay. Okay, hi there. We'll have Laura tell us a little bit about the case, and then if you have anything to present, we'll talk to you. Okay?
It might be a little confusing today because the address is the same for both cases.
Okay.
One of the projects is on the north wall and the other project is on the south wall. So that's why you actually, both design teams are before you right now. We're real excited that we're now including another underpass for the mural project. You might recall the last one that we did, which was on Reno, and if you haven't driven that way, since it's been finished, please do and enjoy it as you drive through. So this is the next project that's come up. This one is involving the Chickasaw Nation, so we're very excited that the projects are expanding. And we have Native American artists that are involved in this project. Once again, the underpass, as you drive through there, it's white and very stark. In this particular case, though, when you get into Bricktown, if you flip around and look the other direction, there's some old murals that are up, as you can see in the picture. And so this is really going to step up the game and introduce a whole other level of artistic endeavor in that location. On the one side, you've got Bricktown, and on the other side, you have the downtown area. And so, as I said, one of the projects we're looking at here is the north wall, and one of the projects is the south wall. In addition to it being those walls, it's also all of the columns in front of them. So if you're looking toward the north wall, you'll see the columns that will also be included with that project. So let me flip to, and I know that I won't pronounce names correctly, and I'm probably going to let you guys pronounce your names because I do not want to botch up your names. So the first design team is Chad and Rihanna. Okay, good. I did that one correctly. And that one is going on the north wall. And the scale is kind of hard to see. I have my own nickname for this one, which to me is the feathers and the angel people, but that's just how I looked at it. And we'll let the artist talk about that. But this was in your packet. It's showing how it's going on the north wall. And so why don't you all pick up from there, because I don't need to read all of your description. It'll sound better coming from you.
Hi, I'm Chad Earls. I'm a member of the Caddo Nation of Oklahoma, and I live at 11105 Spring Hollow Court. And I was just going to read the statement that I wrote about the piece called Earth and Sky. And this would be a collaboration between me and Rhianna Deck, Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And we just wanted to make a piece that was fresh, and new, and very bold for the city. And we wanted to have something to tie in with the land. So we have these sort of red clay coils, sort of like our clay here, our soil. And it sort of forms baskets and this real beautiful landscape in which you have these blue and white feathered figures flying, and the clay kind of providing a landscape for these figures to fly in and out of. And we just wanted to show, that our land's real beautiful. There's lots of sky and earth, and and the people would sort of represent everyone that has lived here and that live here now, and sort of are, a way of nurturing the land and being resilient with our people. And that's what we wanted to bring to our city.
Cool. Can you make that bigger?
Yes, hang on a minute. I believe I can. Can't I? That better?
Yeah. I just was thinking that people watching TV might
Yeah.
actually be able to see it. Can you make it a little bit bigger? And hit that plus sign. Cool. Thank you.
The one thing I failed to say is that earlier this week, the murals went to the, you're reading my mind here
Arts
before.
Commission.
Thank you so much, and it just flew out of my head. And they recommended approval of the murals, and as well as the installation of an identifying marker, which is a new thing that they're doing with the mural projects. And that was part of their recommendation at their meeting, where they attended. I think that was Monday. You all had that meeting to go to.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions? These are two separate applications, so we need to vote on them.
That's great.
I think that it's beautiful. I love the movement, and it's nice to hear your concept and see your artwork and kind of visualize them together. I think it's really nice.
Okay. Anyone from the audience want to speak to this at all? Any motions?
Move to approve.
Second.
That was a Tannenbaum and Faulkner motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Just to clarify, that was on on item E.
Yes. And now,
Today, no, is around May 1st.
very cool.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Now we have the second application. Do you want them to just address it, or do you
Yeah,
want to talk
well,
about this separately?
I don't really need to repeat my original, and let me get these larger so that they can describe. We have the second design team here. That, you're Nicole? Yes. And this will be on the opposite side of that same underpass. I was fascinated because it's totally different, and I think it's going to work really well as you go through. And some of us have probably seen some of these pictures before, looking in a book or whatever, and just never made the connection with who it might be. And I think that's one of the interesting aspects of this one. Are people, they don't necessarily have names, some of them do, and I like the center corroboration that they're doing in the middle, that they're both involved in. But I'll let them tell you about that. And hopefully this is maybe the best view to look at, and I'll get it a little bigger.
I like the way they, looks like as you drive through, that each of the faces could be framed as you go through. So.
So if you guys wanted.
My name's Stephen Grounds. I'm from the Navajo Nation and also Uchee Creek and Seminole. And basically for this mural, we decided to give it context with a poem by John Trudell called See the Woman. And we're going to do a collaborative mural in the sense that Nicole's going to reinterpret portraiture in her specific style, and it's all going to be on one side of the mural, and I'll be doing the same thing on the other side of the mural, and then we're going to work towards the middle piece, which would be a Chickasaw elder, and we're both going to do a true collaboration on that middle portrait. And the portraits that I'll be painting are based on photography from one of my friends in Oklahoma City who's taken photographs of current individuals, and they're all from different tribes, and it will speak towards the modern day Native in today's society. Whereas I think Nicole's going to be painting Natives from the past. So the concept will be future generations.
Great. Anyone?
This is great. I live at City Place. I walked to Bricktown, Harkins. What about the lighting? Is that being worked on? Is that part of your deal? Because you walk through there,
Right.
and I want it to be noticed. It's spectacular, but the lighting is important.
Right. We talked about that.
Oh, we got a lighting person.
Stacy Singer with Downtown Oklahoma City. We're the client of this project, and so we worked with the selection committee in choosing these artists, and they were by far our standout choices, and you can see why. But lighting has come up in other conversations. There are actually fluorescent LED lights under this underpass that we'll be working on replacing throughout the next few months, just updating them, making sure that they're all working, because there are a few that are currently burned out. So yes, we've already worked with Performance Electric to kind of adjust that.
Okay. Anybody from the committee else want to speak on this?
I love the detail of both of these pieces, and I think it's really exciting. Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone in the gallery like to speak to this? With that,
Move to approve. It's a great addition.
Tannenbaum Bates, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
The next item up is item 6A. 1000 North Lee. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, my name is Jim Gleason. I'm with GNS Sign Services, here to represent Reese. Just because I was more familiar with the signage package, they asked me to attend.
Okay, great. Laura, do you want him to just go ahead and address us?
Yeah, I'll speak to
Oh,
it.
okay.
The committee saw the new emergency room addition and the accompanying signage sometime in 2014, I think. But since then, they've gone through and changed the location of some signs. They've increased the size of some. There's been a lot of changes, so they're essentially redoing the sign package, and that's what is before you. They will need a variance for a again, to relieve the requirement of no signs in the right-of-way, the number of signs, the maximum display area, and the maximum sign height. And staff believes that all of these are appropriate because it's, an emergency room is such a specific use in terms of signage.
And understanding where it is very important.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I'm here for questions. If anyone has questions, in a real short version, the emergency is going to move from one side of the block completely to another part of the campus. The buildings are tall. A lot of the signage that we're putting up, we're also taking down about the same square footage at other parts of the building. So it seems like we've got an increase in square footage, but we're also reducing the square footage in other areas. One sign that we have to be out in the right of way just because the hospital was concerned with somebody pulling into the ambulance entrance instead of the emergency. And they were afraid they may get hung up for a brief period of time, which could be a few seconds, could make a big difference when you're looking for emergency.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Any comments from the audience? With that, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Okay. Okay, so that's a Bates Ainsworth motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. We need a recommendation of approval, or we need a recommendation to?
I move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for variance from the applicable sign code regulations pertaining to the prohibition of signs in the public right-of-way, the number of signs, the maximum display area, and the maximum sign height.
Okay, I'll give Gigi that one. You want to say that out loud and describe it?
Do you have a finding for your recommendation of variance? I'm sorry? A finding for your recommendation of variance? It may be in the staff report, like the reason that you think the variance should be granted.
That the scale, location, and proportions of the signs are compatible with the scale and the form of the building as well as the use.
Good job. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. He handled that one well. Okay. The next item is item 6B. It's a walk-in cooler and a dumpster enclosure. Exciting stuff, Larry.
Thank you, Betsy. We do what we can. Larry Pickering, representing the building owner, Gary Holmesy, and Justin Nicholas, the tenant.
Laura?
Good morning. If you haven't been up there to see how well the building is looking, they're almost finished, and we're very excited about that. What I attempted to do in the upper left, and the red is not showing up in these bright lights, is to draw where the enclosure is proposed to go, adjacent to where the walk-in cooler is, so that you could get an idea of the location. You will not be able to see it at all from Robinson. You can't see it unless you take the alley, and you don't really want to take the alley, but if you did take the alley, it's the only way that you would actually see it. So the location behind the building is great because you will not see it as you drive by the building. The proposed material is we have the picture of that, the metal with the perforated metal. I almost there, which they're proposing to actually install on the cooler. It will extend above the cooler to screen the chiller unit that's going up there, and then it will actually be installed on vertical supports to create the dumpster enclosure area itself. So staff felt that the location behind the building outweighed the fact that it's not the same material as the brick of the building. Since you can't see it from the road, we felt that this could be would be considered an application that could work at this location.
Do you know what the opacity percentage of the perforation is? How, is it 30%, or, I'm just curious, somewhat hard to tell on the photo.
I don't know the answer to that question.
We looked at this. The diameter of the perforations is...
I think we were around a 53%
Yeah,
opacity, which for screening was kind of 50-50.
The diameter of those is, it's less than half an inch. It's
they're
relatively small.
3/8 of an inch perforation.
Pinky, well, to me, it's like pinky finger size.
Okay. And did I hear you right that this is just going to be a direct applied to the cooler? It's not going to be on its own screen set out in front?
We'll actually be doing furring strips on the cooler, so we'll set off of the cooler a bit. Those extend above the cooler to provide screening.
But then it's also being installed as the dumpster screen.
Fencing.
Yeah, become the fencing.
And so I understand correctly, there will be an east face of the screen that attaches to the existing black fence that's...
We initially didn't want to do that for basically blowing trash, but we agreed to do that, yes. So it's going to be all the way around.
Okay.
There's an existing fence, steel bar fence that we'll be screening that as well, but we'll be holding it up on the east side just to be able to not have trash accumulate between the two.
So it looks like you're making it the same height as that fence?
Yeah, we're matching the height of that fence coming across and then extending above the cooler.
Sorry, Corey.
No, you're fine. And then what's the finish of the metal panel?
It'll be a painted finish, exterior painted.
You know what color?
We were anticipating going with black.
Okay, great.
Anybody else?
I'll just say this will be the best looking thing in that alley, because I did drive through the alley.
Good.
Thank you, Connie.
It was a mess.
I'll submit it for an award.
Anybody else? Anybody from the audience like to speak to this? With that, do we have any motion?
I will move approval of the application based on that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of this staff.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, that was a Skowthorne-Tannenbaum motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Next item is item 6C, 21 and 25 Northwest 7th Street. Lots of things happening in that area, right?
Yes, the committee saw a presentation on this project a couple of months ago. It's food truck, court, and associated structures. The main comment at that presentation was if the project could better address the street frontage in terms of window and door access, and the design in front of you now has addressed that issue in a much more significant way.
Can I ask a question? Is this under the purview of Automobile Alley?
We send we send all Automobile Alley applications to a representative of the Automobile Alley Committee. The committee doesn't convene for every project.
I just was wondering if this was heard by that committee.
It was not heard by the committee.
Okay.
Dave Ledbetter, 2612 Drake Stone. I'm here on behalf of the developer, Nick Faulkner.
Does anyone have any questions?
Would you walk us through the elevations so that we can understand them completely? Because they are a little difficult.
Starting with the rendering on the south, the entries on the southeast corner. Okay, enter the structure for that particular point. The entry to the actual first floor is in the entry module vestibule located directly inside that. And beyond that, there is a chairlift, and it says stairs that goes up to the main upper level, which is the same level as the majority of the alley.
Okay, so that is the alley, did you say?
The alleyway is to the west.
That is the alley.
Right.
So
And there's no actual egress to this project from the alleyway. We separated it, so there's no...
So from the street frontage is 7th Street?
Yeah, correct.
And that's all the frontage you've got, is right there?
We have frontage on 7th Street. We actually have an exit from the project to the alley to the north. We have an entry to the project from the east lower level food court location. So we have entries from the project from the south, the north, and the east.
What's the program on the first floor?
Excuse me?
What's going on the first floor besides
First
just
floor would
conventional?
probably retail on the lower level. The intermediate level, which is called the second level, would probably for entertainment, restaurants, retail, mercantile. The areas to the north, first and second level, we're thinking about using temporary short-term housing.
Okay. So on level 1, on the floor plan, is that one of the pods, one of the shipping containers?
Yes.
And it will be used, because on the floor plan, it's hatched out, it's hatched differently than the...
Let's see what we have here. Right, that's just to give the location of the actual space on level 1, correct.
And it will be used?
Correct.
So to place that shipping container there, how are you installing that?
We're going to have to do substantial site work, engineering. We're going to have to excavate and build retaining walls to the back.
Okay.
So in just kind of the same vein as Corey's question, what do you see inside those windows?
I'm sorry?
You've added the windows on the street?
Correct. On the first level, basically you see into the space. It's wide open.
And you said you were planning retail?
That's our hope and intent.
As a possibility, but we don't really know what we're particularly seeing yet.
So your plans actually show, maybe the plans are at a different level. Plans actually show windows across that entire frontage, except for kind of 2.
The windows on the entire...
So the windows on this plan are actually showing the second level?
Correct.
And then the concrete retaining walls that are on both the east and west side of the site, are these the existing walls being maintained, or are these new walls?
Our belief is we're probably going to have to replace those. We're securing engineering presently to find out what the existing structure can support.
Okay, so most likely those existing walls are going to come down.
Yes.
But you're planning to build a wall exactly like what's there?
Yes.
How come?
Basically to pay homage to the existing structure. I mean, concrete's appropriate.
Okay.
We base it with some other material, but it's not really.
I don't know that a concrete retaining wall is significant, but what would be the finish of that wall?
Excuse me?
What would be the finish of that
Of the
concrete wall?
concrete?
Yes.
You'd be expressed as concrete.
Oh, exposed concrete?
Yes.
Okay.
On the shipping containers themselves, are you treating them anyway? Are you going to repaint them, or how?
Our intention is to use single-use containers, and the final finish would probably, hopefully, the color is similar to Santa Fe brown, which is typically what you use on a boxcar.
Okay.
And we feel that'd be compatible with the surrounding brick environment, too.
So they will be fully painted, repainted?
Yes.
And then continuing with some of the finishes, the glass, looks like, could you speak to the glass and some of the different colored panels within the...
The glass panels, the full-light glass panels, would be insulated low-E glass, minor tints. The various shades of green, we just basically thought that would be a color that would harmonize with various different patterns.
And that's a spandrel glass?
Yes.
Okay.
On the actual courtyard itself, where you're proposing this white picket fence, what were your thoughts on that? I noticed somewhere else, other places you had the metal mesh fencing, but on that prominent facade, it looks like you've chosen to switch to a wood picket fence, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, on the lower...
on the south elevation.
That was expressed basically a cost factor.
How long do you think this is going to be used? I mean, is it something that you're proposing something infill temporary, or is it something you see, long-term?
It would be nice to go forever. We have a 15-year lease on the one piece of property. The other is a shorter term.
Okay. I guess my comment with the wood picket fence might just be the durability of that fence in this particular location. And if there were any alternative, similar products that might give you a look similar, but that might be more durable.
The recent change in the design guidelines, I think you're limited to the type of fence, and it's, if I'm not mistaken, 1-inch picket with 2.5 inches spacing, and basically it was just a cost factor.
I agree on the materiality of the fence. It seems somewhat out of context relative to the rest of the project.
We'd be willing to substitute a metal rail picket fence if desired.
And then do you have a location for the mechanical equipment? What's servicing this building, and where is that located?
3rd floor, the center module. Go up to, keep going to the left. Back, sorry. That general area in there. And of course, a lot of this can be main split.
So your mechanical equipment is within one of the shipping
Correct.
containers? Are there any air intakes or louvers, or how does that mechanical equipment
There
work?
will be some air intakes after we get a mechanical. I've got a project down at the Medici building, everything. We're doing a split system. It's all located within the structure.
And where would those be located within this project?
Vents, probably to the north.
Okay.
It's not to be visible from the public right-of-ways.
So let me ask this question again. What were you planning to do inside of the space on the first floor?
Hopefully retail or mercantile. I have another
And it's
project
like,
where I have a
how
double...
deep is
excuse
that?
me, they're 8 feet.
So it's going to be
I have
really
a barber shop
limited.
that's moving into an 8 by 20.
Well,
believe it or not.
that'd be great. Why didn't you just utilize the entire first floor? Because it looks like you've got a lot of space that you're doing excavation anyway.
Excuse me, the first floor, basically we're excavating the existing berm back from the property line 8 feet to engage the street.
Right.
Original proposal was to start the structure on the upper level only.
Right.
And the committee wished us to engage the street. And once
Okay.
again, we're trying to engage the street and still reserve the second level.
I guess I share the same question. if you're excavating the berm and the retaining walls, the existing ones are in poor condition. I would expect that those would come down and need to be replaced as well. I mean, once you get into this site, you're digging up the whole site, or at least the south half of it. So at that point, why not make the first floor maybe a little bit larger and more feasible to be rented as a space?
Our hope with the first floor, we've seen in other cities that they do small pop-up shops. We thought that having it as a small space would actually give it some sort of a value. It's cool that it's small and it's tucked in there. I have a buddy that's opening a small shop. It's less than 1,000 square feet right in Midtown. It's Fit Circle. It's very similar in terms of size, and so there are definitely lots of retail opportunities and something that essentially we wanted to make it smaller because we wanted to make it smaller, if that makes sense.
It does. You know, a concern I have about the usability of that space is that, you know, and rightfully so, there's windows on 2/3 of or 3/5 of the south facade. So, you know, when you look at shipping containers like the one that's outside S&B, they use the full wall space of the long axis of the shipping containers. And, you know, if this is a single shipping container and you have limited wall space on the south facade, I don't know who would be able to really use that space.
So you've done what we've asked you to do as far as engaging the street with windows, but we're wondering if it's really legitimate that you could get a real shop in, you know, something that would be like less than 6 feet wide because of the circulation space through the shop.
I think you absolutely could. You know, I don't have any examples that I could pull up here, but I know that as far as a pop-up shop, a smaller space like that has been used.
Well, pop-up shops are generally very temporary until they find a bigger, and maybe that's your goal. I don't.
You know, our goal was to build something that we could display in the front. And so in my opinion, I think a 40-foot container is plenty enough space, even if we're not utilizing both sides of the wall.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm just, you know, I think this is a fun concept, and my office is right around the street, so I think that's a great idea. But I don't feel like there's enough detail in these plans for us to say go. I mean, I think that usually we get a lot more detail on construction documents for a final approval, and it doesn't, to me, feel like everything. I mean, you've answered questions, so you obviously know these things, but we don't see that on the plans, like what type of fence and what type of railing and those types of things. And I would like, personally, that you would come back and give us more detail.
I agree with Connie. I think that we need to have more detail. It fell off. Excuse me. I feel like we need to have more detail in a written form in the presentation.
I have one more question, actually. I mean, I agree.
We don't see that in the submittal, really, itself.
There's no drafted elevations, I think, is what you are asking for.
I don't know if this is really a design comment, but it's more of a functional comment. You're showing tables and chairs behind the dumpsters. I'm just wondering about I guess, how that's going to work, you know, sitting next to the dumpsters, and if that's really what's planned for that particular location is outdoor seating or outdoor dining, I guess. Maybe that's not what's planned, that's just what's shown. I don't know that sitting it next to the dumpsters is the best location for that.
You're talking about smells and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those things, I mean, especially if this is food truck, there's going to be waste, large quantities, and it will not be pleasant. Yeah. So, just a
Okay, I
comment.
understand your comments. I do several hospitality. I have several locations that are quite similar that have dumpster and trash locations adjacent to outdoor seating.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
There's other projects that do have dumpster locations in vicinities of outdoor seating. I'd also plan to mitigate it by using certain, we're trying to perhaps do a solar-powered ventilation system that actually draws the air up. And I've done that in a
so this is
location in
something that
Virginia.
you're thinking about and trying to address in your
Right.
design. Is that what this thing is, actually, on the side of the dumpster, this vertical element, or?
That's actually a outdoor fireplace.
Oh, that's the fireplace.
Right.
Are there other efforts to use PVs and solar energy on this project? I'm sorry, did I just hear you right, that you were talking about?
Just for the trash location all by itself. Basically, you create a ventilation that basically draws the air up vertically and away from the project.
Okay, so just in that location?
Excuse me?
Just that location?
Just that location, yes.
And then on the east lot that has the outdoor seating and the food trucks, is that whole ground area you're proposing crushed rock?
Yes.
Is there anything taken into place to maintain that?
To stabilize it?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on what that is?
There's a project in Dallas, the Trinity Grove, which is across from the bridge. They had entire parking lots of stabilized crushed granite.
So what are you doing here?
Using the same method.
David, you're planning on a concrete border.
Concrete border, yes.
I think this is some of the detail that that we're referring to, that, what's been presented begs a lot of questions about how this is actually going to get executed.
So one of the comments that we've gotten when we've seen other container projects is that it's a lot more expensive than you think it is. Have you been able to get estimates on this, and do you feel like this is really affordable? And
we feel comfortable with our people that we're using, yes.
now, what did you
Yes,
say?
yes, we feel comfortable with the cost estimates on what we've achieved, yes.
Okay. Evidently cutting, like the entire side out of a container, or large holes in the container, can make the structural stability of it not.
If you're referring to the second level, basically I'm spanning over it and I'm creating glass in the space.
I'm actually talking about the first level.
First level.
And creating those holes, and you're creating that size specifically for a container. I think there's some sustainability things that I would really like to know that you've explored, because I think this is kind of an unusual project. It is fun, but I think there's some things that I would like to see as well, as far as making sure that we're not going to see this over and over again, making changes and changes, which we have seen projects like that.
So let me ask you a question to my fellow committee members here. As we look at this project, are you satisfied with the overall design of it? And are we just talking about coming back with, specifics on the materials? Is that it? I mean, and I guess a second question for you guys is, do you have working drawings on this and specifications on finishes and that sort of thing that you're being asked?
Working drawings not at present, no.
But you have specs on the materials you're using and the finishes and that sort of thing?
Majority of the finishes.
I mean, I'm trying to work with you here to figure out a way to get this thing moving forward here, and I hear the pain of some of my fellow committee members. So you know, do you, I guess the question is, do we like the overall design pending some of this other stuff?
I think one of my concerns about the overall design, I think, is it's the container or the building part seems to have a program of some sort that will work, but I don't see that lot next door being forever a food truck lot. I'd like to see that be something else down the line, but I'm not necessarily hearing, and it's going to be available to that, so that's not as big a deal as, but that, what do you see this, you mentioned in the last time you were here that you see this building being there forever. This is something you're going to start and you want it to be a, yeah, but he wants it longer than that, I think is what he said in the last meeting. Am I right?
I mean, we would love it if it continued on and on and on forever, but we know today that we have the option to take it to 15 years.
Okay.
What does the option to take it for 15 years mean? I mean, I think that's very relevant in
right. I guess
considering the project.
We have a 15-year lease, so I guess the option would be to continue leasing the property. I would imagine, you know, it would require that to continue.
Past 15 years.
If we want to take it past 15 years, we would have to renegotiate a lease term.
So you have a 15-year lease?
We do.
Not an option on a 15-year lease?
No.
You know, I think I like the overall concept of the building. I think the containers actually next to the railroad tracks are kind of an interesting use, but there's just not enough detail, I think, actually in the submittal and especially the specifications. I think we just want to see that. I think that's what I'm hearing. We want to see that before we move forward with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I think it has great potential to be a great project, and it's more of understanding the finishes that are intended for each one of these pieces. Is the landscaping part of this review as well? Okay.
No, landscaping and streetscape will come later.
Okay.
I guess my question is, can we approve the basic design of this pending approval of final finishes? Or you guys?
I think that's a little different.
A lot of applicants are understandably reluctant to invest in construction drawings if they don't know that the big picture, but it sounds to me like we're looking at a continuance, and the action on the overall concept is positive. That's not to say the committee might not change their mind when they see the detail, but but I think, well, David, I mean, do you feel you have enough information from the committee to move forward, or do you need an approval before you move forward?
We feel much more comfortable. We had some sort of approval, you know, depending on, because coming with full construction documents, this is pretty onerous in terms of cost to the client.
Well, I don't think we're looking for 100% CDs, but, you know, knowing that the shipping containers are going to get a fresh coat of paint, knowing that the concrete is intended to be exposed concrete, not painted or plastered, things of that nature. You know, that the green panels are spandrel glass. You know, that's not currently communicated. So.
I would probably also, I mean, maybe this is a little more detailed, but I would like to see where your mechanical is going to go. I assume you're going to have multiple units for the different containers, and probably an indication of where those are planned and how they'll be screened.
The mechanical requirements may vary with the requirements of the tenant, too. Quite often, speculative projects like this, the mechanical is completely, really not even addressed until the actual tenant moves in.
So at least giving us an understanding of what the planning is for when those tenants come in and their mechanical systems are brought online, knowing that there is a place to put them and that they're screened versus a tenant coming in and sticking one on top of their container right on 7th Street.
David, I don't think that you have to go to a lot more detail. There's something about the drawings that are, we love having renderings so we can understand something in a 3-dimension. But the drawings seem to be a little cartoony, and so if we could make it a little bit more understanding, because the glass is purple and it's showing, I guess, the container beyond or something in that, but if you could make it so it's a little bit more like an architectural drawing.
We can do that.
And your elevation.
Yeah, or bring samples if you have the glass potentially selected. That would be an option too. We could look at that so you can see the color.
So for the, if this is continued to the May meeting, we would need your drawings in a week from today. If you need more time than that, we'd be looking at the June 16th meeting, and we would need your drawings around June 1st.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to try. I think. It sounds like there are a lot of details we need to get pulled together. I'm confident we can get those for you. A week, maybe pushing it, but
I think you're basically building a shell with no tenants, a white box.
Yes.
And then you're going to do your MEP drawings, et cetera, and that's fine and good. I'm not a rail car fan, okay? And I understand the short-term lease, 15 years, boom, it's done. I know about that. Great location, great activity, a lot of color. I just don't want to see a bunch of rail cars there that you can't lease, and now you got garbage on the street. Maybe you should rethink the whole concept, just from a developer's perspective. It's a great location. You're going to get tenants there, but your white box is not a white box for potential tenants with a TI allowance and do a regular lease. I'm just not a...
So are you saying they're
I don't want
really
to say anything because I'm not a rail car.
You're saying they're very specialized, the spaces?
Well, it's just a bunch of rail cars kind of mishmashed together. Let me finish. And then as they get a tenant, then they'll gut them out and put in what they have to put in. And that could be a long time. And I know how development is, but I don't see it as a finished white box that's presentable in this location, the way it's presented now. But I don't want them to redevelop the whole thing. But I'm very conflicted on this one.
The main tenant is the food truck park, and on the most of the west lot, I thought was a music bar venue. That's one tenant. So I thought the only other lease space was the ground floor.
Yeah. We're going to be the main tenants for that, the west side and the down low area with the food truck park. So those two spaces will be filled. The spaces that then we're left with is the front space and then the space in the back. To address the rail car idea, that was... With the railroad being right there, that was one of the reasons we felt like the concept made sense in that particular place, was because of the influence of the railroad and the continued influence that we'll see.
You mentioned Trinity Grove in Dallas?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been there, and that's an incubator. It's a great concept. I think the guy from... whatever his name was, with Brinker and their Italian.
Mr. Romano.
Yeah. And it works like a charm. But that parking lot has nothing to do with the warehouse distribution center that became incubator.
I was referring to the actual construction of the parking lot using the crushed rock material.
Right, but that's...
Asking how it was stabilized.
That's way over. You've
It's
got
across
a
the
beautiful park area in the front, and, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame. That parking lot
I
is,
was only referencing the actual material to be used.
oh, okay, well, I don't know.
One kind of detail that would be interesting to me is how do you get the HVAC from that one small strip of space into the various spaces? So, I mean, that's just...
What system?
I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. Is the concern how we're going to construct the container project? I know that several things have been brought up, like the fence or the color. I mean, we absolutely intend to paint, the containers and stain the fence. Our goal isn't to build something that looks like a trailer park. As far, like David was saying, as far as having a complete set of building plans, we're hoping to get approval and get you guys to say, hey, we like this project before we pour the resources into, doing the whole thing. So, do you guys like the project? Do you? I would. It sounds like you guys like the project, but then maybe we don't like the project. So I'm just trying to get a feel on where everybody's at.
I agree with Connie, and she said it seems like a fun project. I would agree with that. I think it is unique, and it has a lot of interest visually.
Right.
I can understand why you, if that was your concept, to go with the rail car because of the train tracks being nearby. I can buy that. So I do. I think it's actually fun. I like the idea of the food court. I think talking and thinking about the pop-up shops, I know that is something that's happening. I don't know how long-term that is. It does seem to be somewhat what I would term trendy. So, with that retail space and some of the functions, to me, do still seem uncertain. And then, so I like the project, but it's not clear your material choices and what they're really going to look like, I guess, is probably my holdup.
Yeah, I share the same opinion that I'm in favor of the project overall. It's just having an understanding of what those finishes are. And I don't know if, as far as voting to approve this, does the Q&A that we've had here become part of the record of what the finishes are, or do we need drawings that say exposed concrete, painted shipping container, spandrel glass?
Yeah, I think, Rita and I were talking, I think there's two possibilities. One is you could approve it with the condition that it all comes, all the detail comes back. I don't think you would be able to capture an itemized list of all of what you want to see in the recommendation. And even if you did, I think it'd be too much too much change to assess. So I think obviously the committee wants to see it again. It wants to see more detail. So you could approve with the condition it come back. You could just continue it. It's going to have to come back. You could continue it. I understand the applicant is looking for an approval, but just because, if you were to do the approve with the condition that it come back with all these changes, that there's still you may hate the changes and may not ultimately approve it. So I don't see that we can give as much of a definitive decision to the applicant is what I'm hearing, that there's just too many questions.
Well, so just history, in the past we have given some concept approvals, and then I think we've been told not to give concept approvals. So I think that approving it with the contingency that you come back and give us details would fall into the concept approval.
Right, it's a little bit of a false assurance, yeah. So, yeah, I think I would recommend that you continue it till you have all the information.
I think it's important, just as part of the process of the committee, to have drawings on record that that do define all of the finishes. And if continuing it until those drawings are presented, even in schematic form, just indicating what the finishes are, that's important to get it on record as part of the review process.
I agree with Corey, and I think I would be satisfied with that level of, looking at that level of detail. You know, we don't need full construction. I don't think we're looking for full construction documents. I don't hear from any of our of the other members. But I think we do need to see some detail. We need to have it in a written form.
That's something we can do.
Okay. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this at all? Okay. Well, I think we've discussed it for a long time, too. And you guys are willing to do a continuance?
Yes.
What's the time frame that you see?
Yeah. We'd like to make the next meeting, and we should be able to get the list pulled together for you.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
I move to approve this to the, I'm sorry, I move to continue this to the May 19th meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So Dick said nay. That was a Connie and Corey and Connie motion. Okay, the next item is item 6D. Is the applicant present? And who's addressing this from the staff?
I will.
Okay.
Yes, this is a proposed new four-story multi-use building at the southeast corner of Broadway Avenue and 11th, so it's literally right at the edge of the north edge of Automobile Alley. The staff report is quite long and detailed. There are just a lot of decision points about, you know, what is the character of the district. To what extent do building elements need to be compatible? What is compatible? What, you know, density is desired, especially at this location. There's one of the streetcar stops is going to be just north of this, and that stop could potentially both generate traffic and need traffic to keep it active. But there's also consideration of the scale of adjacent buildings. So we've outlined all of those in the report, and I'll let the applicant take it from there. Okay?
Thank you to the committee. I'm Haven Mankin, and Senior Associate at GSB Architects. And I have with me Scott Parker, who's the project architect. I'm a project designer and project manager. Safdar Muhammad is in the audience here, as is Chad Elmore, who is our leasing and real estate specialist for the project. Laura, would I be able to see the slides? Those that were in our presentation materials. Yes, ma'am. Okay. I think if we can just go up, Laura, page by page, should be okay. We have a great opportunity, I think, for Oklahoma City and Automobile Alley and downtown Oklahoma City. This is a really an exciting project. It is in Automobile Alley. We're looking at the whole city. The project meets the downtown development framework guidelines. We noticed a lot of activity, a lot of housing in the Plaza District, Deep Deuce, Bricktown, Midtown. And I'm sure you have spent time along Automobile Alley. We see people riding bicycles, walking their dog, a lot of activity from homeowners in the area. In fact, we even have an elementary school downtown. It addresses the fact that we have a lot of people moving in downtown. This project addresses the services and needs for those people that are now living in the regions, the area of the city that I just mentioned. Because the people need more services than simply just some restaurants and some bars and things like that, which are fine. There's 3 of them right around our project, and the owner of those 3 applauds our project. But this project addresses those things. We've looked at the history of the site. We know that Johnny's Conoco was built in 1956, but that's not the important part of this site. The important part of this site is E.W. Marlin. As you probably know, he's 10th governor of Oklahoma. He made a fortune, lost it, made a fortune, lost it, made a third fortune. He had about 1/10 of the world's known oil reserves at one time, and thousands of service stations. His service stations were triangular shaped, and they had lines at the pumps in 3 different directions, hence the equilateral triangle symbol for Marlin Oils. They teamed up with Conoco Oil, and then it became Conoco. Continental Oil, and then it became Conoco. So we're addressing and tipping our hat to Marlin Oil Company with the red that you probably will see on the building. We're not trying to be too in your face with that. We're not trying to present a triangular-shaped building, that sort of thing, on the site. But we're not building a historical building either. What we are building is a building that is becoming, I think, a gateway on the north end of Automobile Alley. In scale, it's similar to the Buick building across the street. It's a transitional building. Again, not trying to build a historical building. We think that that's wrong. But the juxtaposition of new buildings and old buildings together really enliven and enrich a community more than if we were to sit here and try to build a box that looked like a 1920s warehouse building. So the setting, as you can see, this slide leading into Automobile Alley just gives you a sense of scale. We have a really nice opportunity to the north with the park and upcoming arts campus there. And but this building, we're addressing the street. All the buildings on Automobile Alley address the street to one degree or another, mostly on the sidewalk. And we've addressed the streetscape, sidewalk zones, storefront zones, all the various zones on this first level. Laura, go to the next slide, I think. Thank you. We've addressed those zones that are in the downtown design and development framework drawings. But we think the building should go farther. A lot of people go into a building, occupy the building, do whatever their function of the building is, come out, get in their car, drive off. That is not integrating with the city. That is not integrating with the community and the people that live there. So our project is taking that a step further. We have parking inside the building, 3 levels of parking on the east half of the building. The road on the north side is Park Place. It's scheduled to be stopped on the east end at the railroad tracks. Part of the quiet zone work is ongoing, and that will be a cul-de-sac. So there's very little traffic on Park Place. So our garage entrance is off the north, and we have 3 levels of parking, 34 cars in the building. We don't have to provide parking, but we know that it's nice to have, and everybody knows there's parking issues downtown, so why can't we, help alleviate that to some degree? So all the things that are desirable about the site plan, the sidewalks, landscaping, as you can see, we plan to have a restaurant on the first floor. We like to have outdoor seating. There's a canopy that wraps around the building 8 feet wide. So we want there to be activity on the street level. In the upper right corner are the dumpsters. They have gates on them. They'll be site-proof gates. They're metal with a metal panel or a screen over the metal framework of the gate. We can bring that to you later if you'd like to see detail, but the dumpsters open out to the alley. We've talked to the trash companies that pick up in the downtown area and worked out details with them. Also in the lower right corner is where our transformer is, and if you look closely you can see a pair of doors there. So we've worked with utility companies and so on the project. Now, if we go to the next slide, this is a realistic rendering by Skyline Inc. We've worked real closely with them on the materials. We actually have the actual materials that we proposed with us this morning, if you'd like to see them. The project is 4 stories with a rooftop terrace. The rooftop terrace is about 50% covered and 50% open. We have this 2 stairs that go up to the roof as well as the elevator, and there's actually 2 restrooms up there. The purpose of the rooftop terrace is for receptions, parties, just get-togethers, maybe wedding reception, as I said. And so it's also, we have walkways that are on the outside of the building. It's basically turning our circulation that would be inside the building, turning it outside, so that we can actually integrate with the city at multiple levels. We have the opportunity here to really engage the Oklahoma City skyline, the sunsets to the west, even the street at different vantage points. If you're walking along the sidewalk, the cars are parked right next to you, and you have those sort of conflicts available. But to see the street, to see a parade, to see a marathon running event, to see the Christmas lights in December from multiple levels, to actually have a party on those upper levels and balconies would be fantastic, as well as the rooftop terraces I mentioned. As I said earlier, you can go to the next slide if you want to, Laura, is the evening shot. We expect the building to be exciting day and night to address, as I said, the local inhabitants in these areas around the city. They're going to need a destination commercial. We actually have a person that has a spa that wants to lease a whole floor already. So we haven't really started leasing, of course, but to have a person that wants to take all of a second or third floor right now, and they love the building, is pretty incredible. On the 4th floor, we're expecting another restaurant, an upscale type of restaurant, which we called a tablecloth type restaurant, and with wonderful views for the Oklahoma west sunsets and to the north and the park and those kind of views. On the east half of the 4th floor, depending on how big the restaurant is, we have office spaces, and we expect a lot of the upper levels to be office-type use, maybe art agencies that want to go in with a new art complex to the north, that sort of thing. But we feel like the window shoppers are going to be on the first floor, but we feel like there will be destination commercial on the second and third floors. People will want to go for a certain service that they don't have right now downtown. The Automobile Alley people looked at the project. We got the feedback from city planning. We've met with city planning several times. We've met with and talked to traffic and plan review several times. So we're trying our best to address everybody's concerns. Automobile Alley had a concern about the exterior materials, which at one time were granite and fiber cement. It's now brick. So those materials, granite and fiber cement, were changed to brick. And so we are trying to address the concerns that people might have about this project. I guess that's about all. I think we had the slides of the floor plans, but you may not care to look at that sort of detail. But the in light of the previous case that you all just finished talking about, we do have all of our mechanical engineering figured out and plumbing and all that sort of thing. So we have engineers working. We're probably 65% through working drawings, so we're pretty far down the pike. I'd like to say that Safdar Muhammad, as I said, sitting in the audience here, it's his money. His family is investing in this project. He's not a developer. He owns property across the street, and he wants to invest in Oklahoma City. This is not a developer project that he's going to turn around in 3 years and flip the building. He's going to own it, and it's important to his whole family. And so we're putting our heart and soul into the project, and we think it's a dynamic building. We have a lot of positive things that are being said in the community, and maybe you've been exposed to some of that stuff, OKC Talk and some other websites and that sort of thing. Scott, do you have anything to add? I think I've addressed everything. I think the next slide maybe is the materials, Laura. Well, that's nighttime in the plans. I can't remember. Oh, just some facts about the building, which, we've addressed all the code issues. As I said, we're in the DBD. We've addressed all of the zoning ordinances for the DBD zoning. You can kind of see a collection of materials here. The canopy at the first floor is black. The railings on the upper levels are black picket metal. We kind of want to be able to see through that and expose the spaces behind those railings. We do have a little bit of the roof of the cover over the roof terrace is meant to be kind of a pinstripe of red. It's not meant to be the major part. It's just a nod to Conoco's logo and Marlin Oil's logo, just addressing having that little bit of red there. We can address any questions. These other images are part of the working model. It's changed quite a bit from there, but we are modeling the building fully in 3D.
Suggestion for moving ahead with this?
Staff's recommendation was to continue it because we had a couple of more questions. Well, one, we recommended approval of the demolition and the site elements. Staff did not feel that the exterior balconies were appropriate in that there is no other precedent in the district for the balconies. One could say that, and part of what the applicant is trying to say is that they're trying to establish a new precedent in a new part of the district, and that may be a valid point of view, but I wasn't sold on their appropriateness. There's, on the drafted CAD elevations that came with the latest round, I couldn't tell if they didn't match the rendering, or the elevation seemed to show a steeper, more prominent slope
On the roof?
on the roof, and I couldn't tell if that was on purpose or if it was supposed to be just this real low slope thing.
It's 312 in both. No changes have been made on that.
Okay, but I wasn't sure a sloped metal roof was in character of the district. Again, part of the argument is that this is setting a new precedent. Same thing. Yeah, no, so that was, those were, again, several items that staff didn't feel comfortable recommending approval without seeing a revised addition.
Okay, thanks. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? You want to come forward and, sure.
Good morning. My name is Rand Elliott. I'm the one of the members of the Automobile Alley Design Committee. I've been a part of Automobile Alley since its inception in 1995, and I'm here to share with you a few comments from the Design Committee. We met on April the 6th to discuss this project in earnest in terms of its appropriateness or inappropriateness to fit into the neighborhood. I would say unequivocally that Automobile Alley is not intending to be an obstructionist in any way, shape, or form. We're really encouraging and wanting new and better things to happen in the neighborhood. There's no question about that. At the same time, it's a historic district, and we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that it falls within guidelines. And I don't know how many of you have read the Automobile Alley guidelines, but they are important. They are necessary in order to maintain some things. At that particular meeting, myself, Brian Doherty, Bob McDonald talked about the things that we felt like that were good and things that were necessarily inappropriate. And there are 16 items that we had in that list. May I review those?
Sure.
Okay. One of the things I'm going to refer, in fact, I'll revert my point here a second, refer to the guidelines. There are a number of important things that are a part of this process. One thing is not to exceed a 25% increase in height adjacent to other buildings. And as you can see, the building exceeds the 25% increase in height on an adjacent building. And so there are simple criteria like that throughout the building that talks about it. Standing seam metal is not recommended unless it's historic in nature. Anyway, it goes on, and there are a number of things that I hope the applicants have included or suggested. There's also a precedent in Automobile Alley for doing neon blade signs. We have a sign program where we actually provide $1,000 towards the cost of a sign if it makes sense and, in effect, follows the guidelines that were set about 15 years ago on that, and this building did not have that approach. It was also submitted as a cement board building, and I understand this morning that it's been changed to brick, which we're happy about that. There's also a comment in here that they suggest that you don't do severely different colors of brick, that you don't do black, white, pink, for example, and I've noticed that their recommendation that it would be onyx, which is black. So anyway, those are some basic guidelines that are available to everybody, and certainly the Design Committee is available for council at the beginning of any project. The question was asked in our group, what about the orange roof? We didn't understand that connection or why. I understand that a little bit better now, and its importance. The signage is inconsistent with the neighborhood. There's not a sense of the neon signage or a blade sign that is consistent with Automobile Alley. We believe that the scale and the proportion of the building was inconsistent with the neighborhood, If you were to look up and down the streets, you will see historic buildings that have punched openings, and there's a very specific proportionate scale that goes with that. This building basically ignores that point of view, and we felt like that it was inconsistent. And these are not things that are challenging to do. They are just about being sensitive to an existing environment. We determined that when you put a new building next to an old building, there should be a soft touch somehow, a relationship, a datum line horizontally or a datum line vertically or a material acknowledgement or something like that when you move from one building to the other. This does not have that, and we felt like that it was a missed opportunity. We couldn't tell what the glazing color was. On the ground level in particular, it looked like anodized aluminum, which would be inappropriate for Automobile Alley. Virtually everything is pretty much in the darker blacks that follows the consistency of the neighborhood. The project was described to us as transitional. We didn't understand what that meant, transitional from what to what. Yes, Oklahoma Contemporary is going to be a modern building a couple of blocks north of that, but transitional should suggest that the building has a deference to the existing historic nature of the building and the area that you're building in, and this doesn't seem to be that at all. It seems to be a building that wants to be a freestanding statement about itself. The exposure from the parking lot on the north side or the parking structure itself seemed inappropriate. Cars are not necessarily a beautiful thing, and our thought was, wouldn't it be great if that were closed in? There would also be some benefits because you wouldn't have the north wind exposure. It seems like an awful lot on a small site in terms of the scale and the proportion of it when you look at the adjacent buildings. I was happy to hear Haven talking about the references to Marland and all of that early on. I don't necessarily see that. You kind of wish that there was a sign or something that acknowledged that in some way that would in fact connect it to Automobile Alley, and there's really no such element going on here. And I think that's what the committee really looked for, was show me the connection. Show me this building doing a great big hug to the rest of the neighborhood, and in an effort to say, we get it, we understand, rather than being a little aloof. So those are some of the comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What was your thought on the balconies?
There's actually reference within the guidelines that talks about that balconies are unacceptable. At the same time, Richard, I think that if you can imagine for a moment, I'm not the design person, so if this building had a masonry facade and it had punched openings in it, and those punch openings were available to a balcony, then that would be consistent with the neighborhood, versus a horizontal sliver of some sort that open, yes, wonderful to experience, maybe, maybe not. I mean, north wind, south wind, it's just a question mark. And I think that there are other solutions that could make this a really good building and still be sympathetic to the neighborhood.
Rand, what are the boundaries of Automobile Alley?
Pardon me?
What are the boundaries?
We have a map in your packet and on the screen. This is at the boundary is Park Place.
Okay. So it's at the edge of the boundaries. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any questions for Rand before we let him sit down? Okay. Probably in here. Yeah, there it is. Hi there.
My name's Kyle Sweet, and I own the building at 24 West Park Place, which is directly to the east, which would share the alley with the proposed building. And first of all, I welcome and applaud the efforts of the property owner to improve the existing lot, which is an eyesore. But the issues that I have are design and use. It's essentially, from the perspective of any other building in the area, it's a parking garage with frontage that is of retail use. The majority of the building is parking. And so what I heard the gentleman, the designer, saying is that this is, it harkens back to something to do with Automobile Alley or the area, but we're about to put a streetcar stop in, a block in there, and a stoplight. The building is still built to service the old-fashioned mode of cars. There's already a parking garage less than half a block away that is rarely full. And so to build a building, which to me, as a neighbor, its predominant function is as a parking garage, is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood and what we as property owners have put a tremendous amount of money into our buildings to take them from, warehouses to, to kind of showcase properties is disconcerting. We would lose any daylight visibility from our building to the east. And I don't mind a compromise in daylight if the surrounding structure isn't a parking garage. And from our perspective, all the other buildings that I can see when I sit in the loft area within my office are all brick. And now the predominant, this monster building which would be to our west, would be nothing but concrete with some type of a coating on it. So I would share Mr. Elliott's design ethos that if you're going to have a building that has parking, then it should be more reflective of the other buildings in the area that have parking, such as Chris Salyer's building at 8th and Broadway. It's completely enclosed. You could never drive by that building or the Pontiac building, which now has BP in it. They had parking ramps. There's no way you can drive by those buildings and think that's a parking garage that just happens to have street side retail. But you can look at this, and if you could go to the northeast view, this would be my concern, is this would also be the view that the hundreds of thousands of people a year here in a few years will be coming from the trolley stops and from the Oklahoma Contemporary. If you can change it to where it says view from the northeast. I think it's maybe the next one. Well, it's in the packet. I saw it. I just pulled it up online on my phone. And the exterior view from that one right there, exactly, that's, even in the one that's a little bit more highly evolved, that's clearly a parking garage. That's not a building. And so if it were completely covered with brick, not just concrete coating in the back, but even the north side was enclosed with, like what Mr. Elliott suggested, punch-outs, that would at least be more consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And that's what people are going to see, that's going to be your gateway to Automobile Alley. Then your gateway to Automobile Alley is a parking garage. And I just met with Chris Cassee from the Kirkpatrick Foundation, who's put a tremendous amount of money into the Oklahoma Contemporary, and they're out raising money for this. And I don't think it's empowering in people who are building the long-term, design look of this area with homage to the beauty of the past, has seen that every time they are trying to raise the millions of dollars to complete the Oklahoma Contemporary. And for myself, I just think there would be a way for them to execute their development, which is very, very welcome and appreciated, in a way that is consistent with the neighborhood, that doesn't detract from the rest of us who have invested money in there and want to enjoy it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Matt Brown. I'm a property owner in the DDRC area, and also I'm a member of the Stockyards Urban Design Review Committee, so I understand what you guys are going through tonight. I did just want to visit a little bit about this project. I saw it for the first time probably about 6 months ago, and it has evolved immensely from the first time that I saw it. And I want to address a little bit Rand's concern about the height requirement. It's my understanding, based on the DDRC design model, that it fits well within those height requirements. There's a minimum height requirement. This definitely fits that requirement. And it's not any taller than anything else that's currently in the district. So it kind of fits in a nice, what I would consider to be mid-range area. That corner right now looks terrible. I think we could all agree on that, that anything that would be done there would be great. But there's also parking requirements. If you're going to build a new building, you do have to have some sort of parking available for your tenants. You can't just hope that... Well, you can't hope that you're going to be able to park on the 3 parking spots out front on the street. I mean, that's not going to work. If you're going to actually have tenants, you're going to have parking. So I don't know that I totally disagree with the idea of coming up with some sort of shading for the garage so it doesn't look so open and garage-like, but I think the comment that half the building is garage and it should be something else, I mean, if you're going to have a building of any size that you're going to be able to have tenants in, you're going to have parking to service that. And I think that's about the only way that can be done. But I think the other, to me, more important part is we're getting ready to have a super modern museum that is going to be built a block, maybe a block and a half if you want to go that far away, that looks nothing like anything in Automobile Alley. I mean, absolutely nothing like anything in Automobile Alley. And that doesn't take anything away from it. I love the design of the new building, but I think this, when you talk about transition, to me, in the stockyards, we have a transition overlay. We have a core district, and then we have a transition district that is kind of on the outskirts. You have, as you guys deal with all the time, you have slightly less stringent design requirements the further you get out from the core district. And to me, this is on the very fringe of Automobile Alley. It is a new, if you want to call it, gateway into the alley. I think it's into Automobile Alley. That's great. But it does, to me, blend a little bit more of the contemporary art museum concept with something kind of new that's, well, it's very new. But it has some glass. It has some things that are a little bit different than what you see in the old traditional buildings in Automobile Alley. But with changing the exterior to the brick, I think that does tie it back in. Now, color choices of the brick and some of those things, that's not for me to say what color they should be. But I think from a transition standpoint, every building in Automobile Alley is a different height. I mean, there's no building, it's not like everything's straight across, or in fact, it looks a lot like you would see in a Lego cityscape. Every building is a different height. And I don't think the height of this building is any more distracting or different than some of the other heights of the other buildings in the district. It just happens to be that there isn't anything there right now. So it will be different seeing a 4-story building there versus the 1-story old service station that's dilapidated and looks terrible. So from the height aspect, I think that's great. To me, the balconies, that's one thing that, frankly, a lot of places that I go in Automobile Alley wish they had. They've been forced to go to a rooftop situation because that's the only way to get people outside when there are parades or things going on and you have to open the windows, you know, on the top of the Buick building or on whatever else, and people are hanging out or trying to see what's going on. I mean, that's not an ideal situation, but people are trying to get outside, and most of, well, all of the apartment complexes and things that have been built, not directly in Automobile Alley, but adjacent to Automobile Alley, all have some form of balconies, very similar to me to what looks like it's being proposed here, to get people out and to be able to look. And I think that, to me, is something that, again, there's not going to be a lot of new buildings built in Automobile Alley, to be fair. Most of those buildings are going to have to be redone or knocked down, and you guys are going to have to approve knocking down a historical building, which I'm pretty sure you're not going to do.
We still have a lot of missing teeth in Automobile Alley, so this could be kind of the first conversation as far as what a new building in Automobile Alley might look like.
And that's fair, yeah. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that this is a very unique situation currently, in that most of the buildings in Automobile Alley have just been refurbished, and mainly refurbished on the inside, with rooftop decks being added to Chris's building, to the Mercantile building, to several of the other spots down there. But there hasn't been an ability, because they're old buildings, you can't just add a balcony on the outside of an old building. This gives an opportunity to do that. And I think with the right, hopefully, input from the committee, hopefully these guys would be able to incorporate that correctly to where it could be something that could be done in future projects if that was available. So, thanks.
Well, thanks for taking the time to come here and talk to us. Appreciate it.
I'm Chad Elmore. The balconies, I just want to speak to the balconies. The main reason for that is we want to do retail with
Can you
this building.
speak, yeah, directly?
We want to do retail with this building if possible. I get lots of calls, people looking for opportunities on Broadway for retail, and we're out of retail for the most part. So when we designed this, we wanted to bring something that when the retail would be inviting on all 4 floors. And as far as parking, we have to have parking. We've talked about that. Staff and I did. If we lease the building and we don't have parking, there won't be any leases. So that's our main concern there. But the balconies is key, I think, for the retail aspect.
Okay.
How many parking spaces are provided? I'm a little confused. It says 19,000 feet, 34 cars. Okay.
So that's not a whole lot of parking. It does seem like a lot of space for, and I understand parking garages are difficult, but it seems like the circular ramp takes up a lot of space. Was there any other way to lay that out?
No, is the straight answer. We looked at, we could get the same amount of parking and over the whole footprint of the site, and that elevates the building up off the street level, which of course we don't want to do. And so we started looking, what if we did a 2-story building with parking on top? Everything that we looked at, this actually is tight. All the parking spaces meet parking regulations for the city, but it is kind of tight, but it gets us at least 34 cars on the building. And if you look, as the gentleman pointed out, from the northeast, that's coming from a dead-end street. Park Place will be dead-ended there, very little traffic. I understand his concerns being a property owner, but the guidelines that that Oklahoma City has, and Automobile Alley, sorry, I'm getting hard to talk, is they don't want to have the parking, near the front. It needs to be in the back and push back. And so that's what we did try to do, is keep and the majority of the building is building space. The parking is less than half of the building space. So anyway, we've tried to get some parking in there the best way we could for, as Chad said, for the tenants. If I might add, one of the reasons for not enclosing the parking is we have wrought iron railings around it. We're trying to address it in an aesthetic way, but if we can't get more than 50% open, then we have to have mechanical ventilation for the parking, and it's quite expensive. And so in an effort to, as someone said, put a lot of square foot on a small footprint, get a lot of building, the building just does get over the minimum for the DBD building height regs, but so we had to address those regulations as well, but also get a blending of space for leasing and parking, and with the cost of the project to ventilate the garage was going to be excessive.
Yeah, I want to clarify there are, in the ordinance now, there are no regulations or guidelines about parking garage screening. In the downtown development framework, certain street typologies are recommended to have more complete parking garage screening. This Park Place is not one of the typologies that was recommended for the fuller screening because it's a side street. That said, everything about the building exterior is a guideline in terms of appropriateness and site-specific issues that may want more or less screening.
Okay. Committee. Now we get to talk about this. Corey.
I have a number of thoughts, and topics to talk about. I'd like to start off by saying that I applaud the scope of the project, the investment in Automobile Alley. I think Automobile Alley is one of the really thriving bright spots of the city, and to see people want to continue that momentum is exciting. That being said, given the site location that's being looked at, there's a lot of it comes with a lot of significance. Being within the Automobile Alley district, we've mentioned how at the north end of the district it becomes a gateway to the district, an anchor to the district. Because of that, the building, I feel, needs to really speak to what makes that district, or what defines the district's character. It really needs to, as you're driving down Broadway from the north, this is your first site. This is your first building as you go into Automobile Alley. It needs to set a precedent to the character that's there and what's already been established. Regarding the scale of the building, I'm completely comfortable with the scale of the building, the 4 stories. The Buick building on the west side of the street is of a similar type scale. I think having a scale at that size promotes more development. Potentially the lot just to the south of this, maybe something will come along and start to make its way up as well. It does fall under the DDRC guidelines of the minimum height. Something I like to point to is Devon Tower. I mean, when Devon Tower went up, it far outscaled everything around it, but I think it starts to elevate the expectations of development moving forward. That being said, I do think if you implement a design that does challenge the surrounding scale of its context, that there needs to be a recognition of that surrounding context. And Rand had mentioned datum lines, using material, using expressions on the building to at least connect to the scale of the existing context around it. And I don't see that here so far in what we've been presented today. Regarding parking, I have no problem if the building needs parking, wants to put parking in it. I do have concerns about addressing that parking and how the parking structure looks on the streetscape as far as creating a dead zone in front of that parking garage. And when you consider the park to the north, OK Contemporary, there's nothing on the northeast corner of this intersection. So the north facade of this whole building is very much exposed, and the whole north facade plays into the experience of entering Automobile Alley, being that gateway, being that anchor. So what's been presented today as far as the treatment of the north side of the garage, I have personal concerns about that. I think there could be more of an effort to integrate the treatment of that facade with the treatment of the retail facades. Regarding the balconies, I do feel that those are out of context with the existing character of Automobile Alley. I think I wouldn't consider it transitional. I would just consider it different and out of context. I don't know exactly how deep those are, but as far as having parties on a balcony, if it's only 3 to 5 feet deep, I don't know how functional that's going to be. I do agree and support the rooftop terrace and activating space up there. I think if outdoor space is desired, there are precedents in Automobile Alley for having the main facade and setting the exterior envelope back into the building and being able to walk outside without being proud of that main facade. I also, regarding the metal standing seam roof, I feel that that is out of context with the existing character of Automobile Alley. This building is within Automobile Alley, and it is at the end. It is a gateway, and it needs to respond to that and be an advocate for Automobile Alley, not a transition to something else, in my opinion. I do have some, and we can get into this if we do, but the south facade, at some point, maybe we could talk about the articulation on the south facade. And then lastly, I just want to say, someone had mentioned the Christmas lights, and that being a great aspect of Automobile Alley. I love that. I think it's something that unites the district as a whole, and the city loves. And the way the design's currently laid out, I'm not sure. I don't know if this property would participate in that effort, but given the balconies and the contours of the building, I don't see how contributing or being part of that Christmas light expression could happen. And again, being where it's located, it's really, it has a responsibility. This site has a responsibility to support the existing character of Automobile Alley.
Good job. Anybody else?
Sure. I agree with Corey on all accounts. I had very similar thoughts when I saw the building. The first thing I saw actually was the garage facades and the lack of treatment to them. One thing I did notice that I thought was interesting was that you could see the ramping, and I thought that actually was interesting because it almost had a sculptural feel on the interior, but I don't think, it feels like a missed opportunity if that was the intent, or not, I'm not sure. But that part I thought was interesting. Otherwise, it's a blank parking garage wall, and I don't think that is providing a street frontage that's probably appropriate, especially as a backdrop to that park to the north. So I definitely echo Corey and his thoughts on that. The standing seam roof, I agree about that roof. I'm wondering, I know you, with the coloration, I understand that idea. I wonder why particularly did you consider standing seam and not some of the other roof types recommended in the Auto Alley design guidelines?
Well, we'd be happy to run a horizontal, do away with the standing seam. I don't think the standing seam is going to be that prominent from the street. It's just a small little texture to the metal, and it keeps the oil canning down and that sort of thing. But we'd be happy to go to a horizontal metal that doesn't have any standing seams. And that's not a problem for us.
Without the slope?
We can even flatten that roof down.
That's kind of what bothers me more than
I guess so, yeah, really.
I don't know that you could see the slope. That's an accurate representation on the angle and everything from the street. But if you're concerned from other multi-story buildings in the area, yeah, maybe from a long distance you would see it. But we were concerned about dumping water off on the south side, so that's why the south side kind of peaks up a little bit like that. We were just trying to have no influence on the building to the south. But we'd be happy to put a flat roof up there and allow the red metal to be a horizontal band and just do away with the standing seam and the 3 and 12 pitch roof. That'd be just fine.
I would just like to note that I would think the slope would be visible, especially from the south elevation. That there's nothing in front of that, and you'll be
because that wall goes up. You're right, sir. You'd be right about that, and we don't really like doing that, but we are trying to not have any impact on the building next to us for obvious reasons. And but we've already investigated flat roof also on this project before. Building code makes that roof have to be fire rated, even though it's an open space. We know what the UL assembly would be in order to achieve that. We've already investigated those kinds of things. We felt like this was a good approach, or we wouldn't have gone this far. But I can unequivocally say that we can do the flat roof because we've already researched that and know how to build it. So that's not going to be a problem. The parking garage, I would like to say, I understand the openness and what people have said about it, but we are using the wrought iron railing to dress it up. We also have uplighting in there. You're not going to look up into that structure and see the glare of a light fixture, of a luminaire. All the lighting is indirect. And so even on the balconies and the overhangs, we've worked real hard to not have a person look up into a light fixture. So we're quite sensitive about this. The second floor, by the way, I think you said, sir, that maybe the glass gets set in. It does on the second floor. And the wall that you see there is on the face of the building. The balcony on the fourth floor, where we're intending to have a nice restaurant, is part of it. A lot of it is 10 feet deep, and a lot of it is 12 feet deep. So it's plenty of room for tables and chairs and to get around. The third floor balcony is 6 feet wide. And we felt like there'd be an opportunity for two top tables along the railing. We would expect people to want to hang out there for a while, rest their feet, visit with a friend, that sort of thing. So we very much intended for it to be an interactive space.
I just think this is, I really think we're all happy to see a building of this importance on that corner, and I just applaud you for wanting to do this project. And I think it is a huge opportunity to be an iconic building like the other buildings that are in the area that are iconic, and really have such a special character. I see it is definitely a gateway. It's an important gateway into that district, and I see the Automobile Alley district as I do many of the districts, as discrete unto themselves. I don't see the necessity for it, or really even the value of a transition. I think it's very interesting to go from a discrete district to another type of use, which that museum will be a very important, iconic building, in and of itself. So I would like to see this building be more integrated into and have more reference to the Automobile Alley look and feel. I think, and just the aesthetic of Automobile Alley, which is softer, maybe for lack of a better word, and just a more organic look. And I do agree with Nicole and Corey regarding the pitched roof, the standing seam metal. I don't mind the color so much. I think the reference to the color and Marland oil and that symbolism could be a very interesting opportunity to bring back the whole automobile aspect of, and the energy aspect of that as an entrance to that area. But I think this is an opportunity to have a stellar project. So we want to work with you on it.
The plaque that's on the corner that mentions Conoco, we're salvaging that and going to mount it in the building. I think if, I think maybe as Rand had said, maybe a little bit of the history of the site. I could see either doing another bronze plaque or even a granite piece or something that could be mounted in the building wall that would talk more about E.W. Marland and, some of that history besides the Johnny's Conoco plaque. So, things like that, those are great ideas, and we'd certainly entertain doing that. You all have a charge to do with the city, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So, but a juxtaposition of new and old enriches both. And I think that if you had a new building, we did try to, with the first floor canopy, we tried to line that up with other canopies down the street. And the second floor balcony is just a few inches higher, isn't it, than the 16-foot building to our south. We were trying to be sensitive to those lines that Rand talked about. But a new building can actually enhance and enliven and enrich the historical buildings adjacent to it and across the street with the Buick building. So that juxtaposition, I think, is extremely enriching for a city. And so I'd like for you to think about that. We purposely did not try to build a historical type building. So.
Anybody else?
I think the activity, all the people when they're sitting out there in that new taco place and not the ranch, Red's Steakhouse when people are outside, I love it. I love that. That's what Broadway's all about or should be. It was never contemplated earlier, but so I love the interaction. I love the balconies. I really do. I think that's a great idea. Parking is necessary, and I applaud the project. Give or take a little more brick, a little better roof design. I know what's going to happen with the Contemporary. I'm somewhat invested in it. I think it's just a whole new feel that we need to have. You made a comment. The new and the old improves each other, and it's time for that. And it's a little gutsy, and that's what development's all about. So personally, I have no issues with the whole project, other than the roof.
Any other comments?
Well, I can't believe I'm going to agree with Dick, but I love the balconies. I'm sorry. I think balconies are fun. Everybody can. So anyway, I do love the balconies. I am not a fan of the south facade because that's what I'll be looking at from that direction. I think it needs something. I'm not going to tell you what, but it's not very, very attractive. And I am not a fan of looking at the parking garage also. And I'm sure there's other things that you can do that makes that look better. Are both of those walls, the parking garage and the southwest, just concrete with a coating on them?
Yeah, a concrete block with a coating. They'll come off smooth. And we intended for elastomeric coating over the block. And we can't have any windows. We might can try to figure out something we could apply to the wall, or maybe have somebody paint a mural or whatever. But you know, it's a rated wall. It's a fire-rated wall, and we just can't have the openings in the wall. So I understand your concern. It's just a big blank wall. We are a few inches off. The way the site works, there's a crooked line, 4 inches on the west about, 0 on the east? The whole way? Okay, 4.8 inches. There's a gap, 4.8 inches between the two buildings. Not sure why that is. But it struck us late, you know, when we got to Alta surveys and stuff like that done. And so, but we still have the fire-rated issue on the wall. And we even investigated applying, you know, some sort of artwork, metal type of something to the wall. And, you know, maybe we could keep looking at that idea, see what's appropriate. But we know that a number of buildings in Automobile Alley have various artistic things on them, you know, brightly colored murals. We're not exactly saying that, but maybe there's something that we could do.
I had a thought on that wall, and I wondered, and I know it's a firewall, and I don't know if this is allowed, but the location of your rooftop terrace. Like right now, that wall is very prominent because it looks like you have the 5th floor, like a penthouse level on that side. Have you looked at flipping that so that that level of that wall is brought down to the rooftop on that side, so it's not an extra story?
Yes, and originally the stairs were inward in the building and the elevator, and it didn't work for our leasing, the way we're trying to lease the building. So, and we wanted that other integration of the elevator, coming up and coming right out towards the street. And the stairs have windows and glass doors. We want the nighttime shot to have lights on in the stair, so it's inviting, people feel safe going into the building. So those elements were brought out to the corner. Going with a flat roof will take that sloping wall part down.
Sure. Well, I guess what I'm saying is have that prominent corner on the north corner.
Well,
Why
the north corner is your most important corner for
Yes.
tenants.
I agree.
You wouldn't want to put circulation there, I don't think, but...
Well, it's a rooftop area right now, so there's no tenant there per se, right?
Well, I meant down on the floors below to carry your elevator.
Oh, for the vertical circulation tower. Okay, yeah, I understand that. Sure.
Anybody else, Corey?
I'd like to respond to your comment about juxtaposition. And I completely agree that juxtaposition and contrast does help define each of the two relative parties in play. But there are appropriate times to do that, and then there are times where it's not appropriate to do that. And while we're talking about one building, we're talking about it in a greater scale of the district as a whole. And I think there's wonderful juxtaposition of Automobile Alley to what's being created at OK Contemporary. And this site, I don't feel, is the appropriate venue to create juxtaposition within a district that has such a unified character to it. I live in an HB neighborhood, and there's a reason why someone can't build a modern home in that neighborhood. While it would emphasize what is modern versus what is historical, it's not an appropriate situation to do that.
Anybody else? Okay.
Sorry, I've kind of been asleep over here. The one thing I noticed about, if you look at Automobile Alley kind of in its entirety, is the clean look. I mean, there's a rhythm to it. And this is a gateway building heading south into downtown. And it just looks to me like that for the scale of this building, there's just an awful lot of stuff going on. I mean, it seems like, I love balconies. I'm not a designer. But it just seems to me that it just kind of is a glaring difference between, what is Automobile Alley and not. And I like new stuff, and I'm not a designer, but that's just a general comment from me. And I think that north facade, as you come into downtown, certainly something on that north parking area needs to be addressed. I mean, I dig the spiral ramp, the Guggenheim and all that stuff, I don't know if you can do something fun with that, but something needs to be done to that area. That's all I've got. And I basically agree with the comments of my other.
So I've saved mine till last. I really don't have anything new, but I want to re-emphasize some things. So appreciate the fact that you're doing it the right way, you're going through the right process, you're hiring a good architect, and you're putting a lot of investment in here, and we totally appreciate that. I think the massing is, as far as the retail space, is pretty good. I'm not really fond of the balconies. I feel like there's such a departure from Automobile Alley, and the owners of Automobile Alley have really, created this great space for you to put this building in, and they've really nurtured their buildings and made sure that the streets are the right stuff for creating the environment that is being created there, and it's still being created, and this building is going to be part of that continued creation. I love balconies. I feel like Mr. Elliott proposed some options for balconies where, punched openings with balconies coming out, but the emphasis on the horizontal emphasis on those balconies just feels like it kind of fights with the buildings around it. We would have to give you a variance if you wanted anything less than a 3-story building. So this is, in my opinion, this is a good size building. And then I also agree with the parking on the north side. I think that there are ways to do that where you can maintain your openness, and so you wouldn't have to get that mechanical requirement fulfilled, but still kind of shield everybody's view from that. So, I mean, those are my 2 cents. And I would like to divide these up into different sections. So we didn't actually talk very much about the building. Everybody kind of, like that's there right now, everybody kind of alluded to the fact that it's not a great building. What do you want to?
Nobody asked any questions about the demo. Yes, definitely. I would suggest breaking up the motion, 1, about the demolition of the existing structure, and 2, about everything else. I mean, you technically could approve the sidewalks and the landscaping, but we felt it didn't make sense to approve any of the other items until we could see it all as the main building.
Okay. So do you have any issue with us dividing this up a little bit? We want to.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That'd be fine.
All right. So does anyone have any questions about the demolition of the existing building? I think Gigi has a fondness for that building.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment and ask my fellow committee members. We have in the past, I'm ashamed to admit, gone forward with some demolition, and then nothing happened on the site.
Oh, yeah, that has happened.
And so that is a concern of mine. I don't have any problem per se with the demolition of this particular building, but and we sat up here before and said, can we have some assurance that we're really going to do something here? So I'd ask our staff what their comment might be.
There is, there's no way we can tie require the demo. Was that, and what was your?
Do you feel like, I guess the question is, do we feel like by itself this building would be reused and
I understand you may be referring to the Stage Center as a classic example of what you just brought up, but we're not going to tear down that building until we're ready to do the whole project. So you want to just continue it then? The only reason I agreed is if you want to take some things off the table, like the demolition, because there's quite a few pages in the staff report dealing with the demolition.
I think it's somewhat important to go ahead and take demolition off the table, because if, let's say this was the 1920s Conoco station, then if there was a real concern about removing it, that would potentially derail the whole project. So if everybody's agreed on the demolition, I would suggest going ahead and approving that so that you know you can move forward with a replacement.
It'd be nice to know, like you said, Lisa, that that's off the table, but we're not going to start by taking down that building until we're ready to do the whole project, and we can't do that until we have all our permits and your approvals in hand.
Does the demolition need to be voted on to convey that there, at least personally, there's not a concern about keeping that building? I would rather fall under the procedure of not approving a demolition until everybody's confident that there's going to be another project.
Yeah, one of the demolition criteria is accompanying proposal for replacement. So you could state that you don't want to approve it because you're not comfortable with the accompanying proposal for replacement. Absolutely. You could also say that someone could motion approval of the demolition based on other factors. It's not historic, it doesn't fill up the site, stuff like that.
Yeah, what are we asking them to come back with? I'm not clear myself.
Well,
You want a
let's see.
different building? I mean, it's
Well,
all...
I think that we have some tweaking that we're requesting.
All right.
Yeah, what I wrote down was to take another look at the parking garage north facade, take another look at the south facade, how it can be improved or dressed up. We talked about modifying the roof, the flat roof, standing seam. It seems like a lot of people like the balconies, but maybe in a different form. And yeah, those were the big points I wrote down from the discussion.
I already stated that we'll flatten the roof down and change stainless steel metal to a horizontal metal. The DBD allows architectural metals. We're not talking about just plain old sheet metal. We're going to use a good quality architectural metal. So we'll do that. I think we'll look at what we can do to screen. There might be some metal blades, vertical or something like that allow the air to blow through the parking garage and still screen. We'll definitely look into that. We're listening to you. We're not fighting. So on those lines, because of the reasons we stated already that we think are really important about these outdoor spaces, unofficially, would it be proper for me to ask the committee if they would entertain, meeting us halfway? That's not appropriate?
No, sorry, I thought you were going to say something else.
Oh, okay. Well, I might say something wrong. I don't mean to, but and I don't know if our client would be agreeable or anything, and so I'm not saying we're going to do something. I'm just trying to test the water because we would very much like to keep this project on track, and if we can come back to you pretty quickly, we want to do that.
But the applicant has to agree to a continuance.
Excuse me?
The applicant has to agree, if the committee were to recommend it be continued to the next meeting or the next meeting, the applicant has to agree.
Okay.
So one thing I would suggest from what you were just kind of fishing for, I think, is that maybe you get with your client, you find out what he is willing to do after he's listened to this entire deal, and come up with maybe a couple of sketches that you bring back to us, that you don't go to Skyline and you don't pay for another rendering or whatever, but you just come back and so we can have a discussion on that, and
Okay.
it may take, if you can submit sketches within a week.
I think we can do that. We're using Revit modeling. We can make adjustments pretty quick.
Okay. And there are some great examples down the street, down Automobile Alley. It's still real strong horizontal lines, but they don't extend out into the street, and with the great big window bays, so you can still get all that natural light in, maybe even just openings, like somebody mentioned, Corey mentioned.
Well, as you said earlier, Safdar Mohammed has spent a lot of money so far, and not just architectural and engineering fees, but we've had soil reports done. We have environmental testing going on that's expensive for that property, being an old service station and all. The civil engineering, the surveys, and everything else, the renderings, as you mentioned. He's committed to the project. He's putting his own money into it. And I don't know where he stands on some of the issues that have been talked about. But we'll go back and we'll visit and we'll see. And it's his money that's at risk here. And I know you all have a duty to the city, a responsibility. And, but he's committed, as I said at my opening remarks, to, or he wouldn't have his business in Automobile Alley right across the street.
Well, it's so exciting that he is willing to really put this effort in, and we know he'll be there for a long time. So, so can we continue you until the, okay.
I just have one more comment. I know it's real important to get along with your neighbors, and in the context of, you know, Automobile Alley as a whole. So I'd really like for whatever you come back with to have some degree of acceptance and or agreement on kind of the plan. I know it's hard to design by committee. I've been on the busy end of that, and I've been standing in your shoes, by the way. But I would, if you could, take some of the comments, and not only of us, but of the people in the audience, and incorporate them. I'd really like to see that.
Well, that's a good point. And as I said, we did listen to the early comments from Automobile Alley. It'd be quite disrespectful for me to ignore comments that are being made from a neighbor or from a committee. And we're just not that kind of people. We're not going to do that. So we're listening.
It's so obvious that from just your whole narrative that you've given us today that you have taken thoughtful steps. Every step of the way has been very thoughtfully done on your part and the owner's part, and that's so appreciated because you've come here with all kinds of answers and you're all prepared, and I think we're headed in the same direction. I think it's just an opportunity for us to work together to get to something really great. So, you know, I don't have a problem with demoing the building, but it's probably better when we have something that we can approve. I think it's better probably just to keep that all in one. If you're willing to do a continuance, then I think.
So the May meeting?
Yeah, we don't want to extend any longer than we have to. So,
okay.
We'll get back with some materials.
Okay. With that, then I move that we continue this case to the May 19th meeting.
Second.
Okay, that's a motion by Gigi, second by Chuck. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks very much. We're so excited for your project. This is going to be great. Okay, and since it is now noon, practically, we have communications are the administrative approvals, and there are a lot of them. Any big things that we need to
I guess the big story is just the number of them. DDRC has been so busy. It is me, Michael, and Laura all the time.
And I want to commend the staff because I read through this a couple of days ago, and it helps us a lot because I know all these items are important, and they have the knowledge and the resources to get us this list. And I commend your hard work, and I commend that you take the time to understand all these details and approve them. It makes life a whole lot easier. I had a couple of these administrative things, and they don't have to come before us. This is great. Keep doing it, but I know how much work you have to put into it, and I thank you for it. That's all.
Okay, and the staff has a comment about Preservation OKC?
Yes, if you haven't already had a chance to take this survey, there's a link, SurveyMonkey. It's about some input on the preservation plan that our division is working on.
Good. Any other comments from the committee? Our next meeting, as we have noted, is May 19th. I hope everyone can be there. Well, we don't want you replaced, Dick.
Dick's term limited.
You're coming up yourself, baby.
When are we coming up?
You're done?
No, in a year.
Next year. I meant next.
You can get reappointed.
Your term.
I did. You can get reappointed.
We'll miss you, Dick. Who's going to make all those motions?
I came on the same time you did, and I got reappointed.
Well, your term's coming up, but you were, doesn't matter. Aubrey says, I got a new guy coming. I said, fine, just let me know so I don't have to come over here.
Oh, but, well,
Like Loftus, you remember Loftus?
we love your comments.
Yeah, He's still burning. He's still a little
Okay, so, with all of that said, we are adjourned. So you can turn off the microphones.